So again, if you're only just joining us, then all of our previous webinars are available on demand, so you can always head over to our website and view them at your own leisure there. So please do take a look at those if you haven't seen any of them. Today, though, we're going to have a look at change management within Windchill. So without further ado, let's have a quick look at the agenda. But just before I run through this agenda, again, as always, please do utilize the questioning functionality within GoToWebinar. There's time at the end there for us to run through and take a look at some of those. So please do leverage that. So the agenda for today then. So I'll do a little bit of an overview again of PDS Vision for those of you that may not be aware of us. We'll take a look at why change matters within businesses, within engineering, what is involved with change, what Windchill has to offer for that change process. Going to follow up that with a demonstration illustrating a change process being carried out throughout Windchill and the various different parties that are involved within a change process or an example change process. And then we'll finish up with some of the benefits again of utilizing and leveraging change within Windchill. And again, Q&A at the end. So if you do have questions, please do leverage the questioning functionality, and we'll take time to answer those at the end. And if we can't answer, we'll follow up as always offline and make sure we get those sent out. So myself, my name is Rory Island Bocott. I have over a decade of experience with PTC products across the portfolio. My main focus is in CAD and augmented reality, but as well as a little bit of PLM, IoT, some other of the more niche PTC products, but the entire PTC portfolio. And this was my first job out of university, so that entire time, that decade of experience has been here at PDS Vision. So just a little bit about myself. So PDS Vision then, again, for those that you may be not aware, we're a global business. We span 16 different locations across the globe with over 500 employees, over 300 of those being technical experts. Okay, so hands-on with the products, such as myself and my colleagues here in the UK and across the globe. So our expertise, we encompass the entire PTC portfolio, so all of the PTC products, along with the ANSYS simulation technology and all of the subdivisions that are involved within ANSYS. We also have our own range of MyPDS applications, which add value and sort of bolt on to the PTC portfolios. That could be products for CAD, PLM, ALM tools, IoT, or AR. Some of which is one of the products, MyPDS Search, I'm going to talk a little bit about today, and something that I'm probably going to talk about in the next episode as well, where we start to talk about collaboration within businesses and how PLM helps or aids collaboration within businesses. So for those of you joined us for the whole series, you should have a pretty good understanding now of the digital thread. But for those of you who need a refresher or are joining us for the first time, let's just have a quick summary of it. So the digital thread then is the flow of data throughout a business and across the entire product lifecycle. Right? It connects people, processes, and systems from initial design through manufacturing, service, and beyond. And it ensures that everyone from engineering to the shop floor to out in the field has access to the right data at the right time. Okay? And in sharing and making that data a seamless flow, you enable better collaboration. People within businesses can make decisions faster, and you end up with an overall more efficient product lifecycle. Everything's much more seamless when it comes to it. And so for this series, we've been focusing on PLM and how PLM sits within that digital thread. And hopefully, if you've been joining us over the series, you can start to see how PLM has that seamless flow of data, and it breaks down those silos and enables you to share this information with various different aspects of your business. And again, this is something I'm going to cover even more in the next episode when we start talking about collaboration more as a collective and some of the tools, some of the other tools that we have within PLM to make sure that you're all working together from the same data, accurate data at the right time. So yeah, that's on the 11th, I believe, of April. So again, make sure we join for that, where we cover it in a little bit more detail. Change management though. So change management then is the structured process of controlling, tracking, and providing and approving engineering changes to ensure accuracy, compliance, and efficiency. So with an effective change management process, it can help manage revisions, approvals, and more importantly, sort of identify the impact of a change across maybe engineering, manufacturing, and other departments. And leveraging a tool like Windchill can make that entire process much easier than it can be without a dedicated tool. Understanding what the impact of a change is can be an extremely difficult and complex thing to do without an effective tool in place. So, why does change matter? So, engineering change then, it's not just about altering designs. Well-managed change is key to quality, it's key to cost control, and ultimately staying competitive in really busy markets. If you're getting bogged down with changes, you can have slower design cycles. You're maybe not going to get your products out on time. So effectively managing and creating an efficient change process is important. It ensures product quality and compliance by catching issues early and keeping everything documented. Without a clear process, teams work off outdated data, leading to errors and rework. If you have incorrect parts being used, delays in production can happen, and extra time can be spent fixing avoidable mistakes. So good change management keeps teams aligned, across departments like engineering, manufacturing, and suppliers, all staying on the same page. It also provides traceability and accountability. So we always know what changed, who changed it, and why, which again is critical for compliance, especially if you're working in a regulated industry like pharmaceutical or aerospace, for example. More so on that, it accelerates innovation. By making improvements easier to implement and reducing time to market, we can really accelerate our product development cycles. And finally, then it prevents supply chain disruptions by ensuring suppliers have the right information when they need it. So when handled well, then engineering change doesn't slow us down, but it can actually help us move faster and reduce risks and stay ahead of the competition. Change is a big topic for a lot of our customers. Everyone does it in some way, shape, or form. Making sure you have the right tool there to aid you on that process is really key. So let's take a look then at what Windchill has to offer in terms of capabilities then when it comes to engineering change. What is it offering us as a tool? So first off then, as a business, a standardized and automated change process, as well as allowing us to tailor the process to the situation. So whether it's a full change review board or a fast track for quick adjustments, Windchill can handle these various different approaches. That allows us to keep governance in place, again, without slowing us down. So having that standardization, everyone working in the same way across the business, everyone knows the process, know where they are within it, and that sort of stuff. So it can also sync automatically with manufacturing systems, so ERP and MES, ensuring that once a change has been approved, that data again it seamlessly flows downstream. This can eliminate misalignment and reduce errors in production, for example. Windchill's a configurable change process, which means we can adapt workflows to fit your business needs, whether that's a rapid sort of prototype approval process or a highly controlled change for a regulated product like a pharmaceutical product. The process can scale across the entire life cycle, so from development through to maintenance as well. Built-in business rules help enforce corporate standards and compliance, preventing incomplete work or incorrect changes from slipping through the cracks, so to speak. And then finally, we've got automated workflows to keep everything moving by assigning tasks, notifying stakeholders, and making sure approvals follow a structured, repeatable process, cutting out manual tracking and reducing bottlenecks. So again, that standardization and automated process helps speed up the entire change process. So with these sort of capabilities, Windchill can help you manage change in a way that makes sense for your organization, ensuring the right level of control while keeping the business moving forwards. So I think, yeah, before I move on to the process itself, I think it's important to remember throughout this presentation that Windchill, what I'm going to show you in the demos and those sorts of things, you shouldn't allow Windchill to dictate your change process. Instead, think of it as Windchill should be configured to support what works best for you and your business. So as I said, when I jump into the demos and run through the process in a second, bear in mind it's configurable. Don't let Windchill's process dictate. It's highly configurable and changeable. You can adjust it to whatever suits you best. But let's have a look at a typical process then, or what we would call a typical process out of the box with Windchill. So engineering change in Windchill is a closed loop and CM2 compliant process. Okay, and that process can be broken down into 5 main steps. Okay, and they're on screen now. So first step is to identify the need for a change. Second step then is investigate the need for a change. We then have planning of the change, the implementation or the execution of that change being carried out within the business, and then finally releasing that that changed information downstream. Okay, that could be to ERP, MES, that sort of stuff. So yeah, this would be a what we call a typical process, a change process within Windchill. However, as I said, this can be adapted if you want to cut down or a simplified version of that. That's possible. Or if you want even more control, you want to start including review boards and those sorts of things. Again, that can be included as well. Maybe you just want the ability to create a change notice off the bat or a change request. You don't want to bother with problem reports or waivers and those sorts of things. We can do that. So let's take a look at these steps in a little bit more detail. So the first step then is to identify and inform the business of a possible issue. Now, this can be done in several ways, and I think it's probably worth just spending a little moment in time just to run through some of those examples. So first up, you can have a problem report. So a problem report is an internal record of a suspected issue with a product or a process. And this can be raised by anyone who has access to Windchill, or you can raise a problem report on behalf of someone else if they don't have access. And it's often the first step in identifying a defect or a design flaw within a product, let's say. So as an example, an engineer might notice that there's a bug in a software and they want to raise a problem report, or they notice in the example I'll run through, an incorrect component is being used, something like that. You then have a non-conformance. So a non-conformance occurs when a product, part, or process does not meet the predefined specifications or requirements. Okay, this could be due to a defect, process error, or maybe a supplier issue. So an example could be a supplier delivers a component that fails an internal quality inspection when it arrives on site. We then have a deviation. Okay, a deviation and waiver. I'm going to talk about these, but some businesses sort of it can mean the same thing in some cases, but I'll give our definition of what we might mean by each. So deviation then is a planned request to depart from the as designed configuration before a part is manufactured. Okay, it is used when a temporary adjustment to specifications is necessary. So maybe a supplier asks for approval to use a different grade of steel for a batch of parts due to a material shortage. Okay, we would consider that a deviation. We then have a waiver, and a waiver is a request for an acceptance of materials or parts after they have been produced, okay? But do not conform to the specification. So unlike a deviation, which is planned beforehand, a waiver is issued in response to an unexpected non-conformance. So maybe a supplier example, maybe a supplier delivers a component with some cosmetic damage, but it doesn't affect the performance of the part. You might put forward a waiver to continue using that product, even though it doesn't quite meet specification. We then have a customer complaint, which is an external quality issue, again reported by a customer, which may trigger a non-conformance or maybe a CAPA, those sorts of things. So yeah, customer just reporting that a product is failing under normal conditions, maybe. So as I said, within Windchill then, anyone can log an issue to inform the business. and users are able to communicate design issues by marking up CAD data alongside descriptions and attaching any reference documentation that they feel justifies the raising of a problem report, let's say. I believe there's an issue. I need to let the business know. We can follow one of these sort of processes. The next step then is to figure out whether a change is needed. Okay, so at this point in time, we're not trying to solve anything. We're simply collecting facts. The aim is to gather all of the relevant information to get a clear picture of the issue. This could include, drawings, test results, supplier feedback, basically anything that helps justify or evaluate the need for a change within the business. Once everything is compiled, that all comes together in what we call a change request. And this is a formal proposal outlining the necessary changes for the relevant stakeholders and can be used to address one or more problems. So in the previous step, we talked about problem reports. Maybe you have multiple problems within a business, which you might be able to solve by within one change process. Okay, so investigating the need, we're carrying out an investigation, understanding the impact, what is required. So once we understand the need, step 3 then is all about putting in place a solid plan, okay, to keep everything organized and controlled and on track. So this will typically start by reviewing all of the details collected in that previous step from the change request, from which then we can create a change notice, which enables us to formally outline a plan of action, what needs to be done to carry out this change. That makes sure everyone is aligned, and we break down this process into what we call change tasks. And these are individual steps that are clearly defined and to be carried out by various people within the business. So in order to replace a component in an assembly, we need step 1, step 2, step 3 to take place within the business, and we can assign users to those steps in order to carry out that process, and as a logical flow within the plan. So that's a change notice. So once we've put the plan together, step 4 then is all about execution and putting that plan into action. So implementation, we're carrying out the change notice and all the individual steps or the individual change tasks that were put together in that plan. Once all of those tasks have been completed within the plan, then we can then carry out an audit to ensure that everything has been done correctly before final sign-off. So at each stage of this, and you'll see this in some of the demonstrations, there is an approval process for users to sign off work that has been carried out already. But before we do a final release of this information to the wider Windchill users, there's an audit process that can be used to review the entire process as a whole. So rather than, we've got those individual check marks that are carried out throughout, and then at the end we have this audit for a fully defined wrap-up just before we release everything. The final step then is release downstream. So this isn't something I'm going to be able to show off today in a demo, but in the real world, once a change has been distributed into Windchill, we need to make sure that that change is fully integrated into the wider business, okay, not just Windchill. So this means informing suppliers, updating ERP systems, so maybe procurement, manufacturing, and service are all working with the correct data. After this, that change then is fully operational. It's properly documented. With Windchill, it's fully traceable and everything's stored and historically archived. At any point, we can go back, take a look at what happened in that change, find out who did what, where, when, those sorts of things. So let's take a look at a demo. And again, bear in mind, this is a typical process. It doesn't have to be the process, but this should hopefully illustrate from start to finish what might happen within the business then. So let's start off then with step 1, of course. So identifying the need. So in the example, in this demonstration, we've taken on the role of Mike, and Mike works within engineering. Mike uses a product called My PDS Search, which is something I'm going to talk a little bit more about in our next episode. But My PDS Search is for retrieving information from Windchill. And Mike is in manufacturing, so he tends to work a lot with drawings. And Mike's noticed that the shaft in this motor assembly here is the incorrect version. It should in fact be the spline version that you can see on screen here. So within search, so Mike tends to work from these drawings, he's going to create a problem report. And again, problem reports can be generated in Windchill. I thought I'd just take the option to show you some of my PDS search, which is one of our applications. So Mike is going to fill out this problem report, and you can see that my PDS search has already done some of the work for him by gathering some of the affected objects. So these are the associated objects to this drawing, the assembly, the drawing itself, and the part that's used within there. And it's also collected the affected end item. So you can see that the motor 1 horsepower is the end item that is being affected. If there are multiple, again, they'd be in this list. So Mike is alerted to the business that he thinks there's a problem with this motor assembly. We now move on to a user called Doug, and it's Doug's job to keep an eye on problem reports. So he's been flagged, again, by the automated workflows within Windchill that a new problem report has been created by Mike. And through the collection of data, Doug can now review what Mike has put forward. So he's understanding, you can see that the drawing, the related part, and the description that Mike has given. So giving Doug all the tools he needs to decide whether or not this is in fact a problem. And Doug agrees that this is a problem. So all Doug has done there is recognized and accepted with the business that there is a problem. We're not doing anything about it just yet. So Doug is now, he's decided we have that problem. It's something that should be actioned. So it's Doug's job to now put together or investigate the need for this, this change. So based upon the information he knows about, we need to swap up this motor shaft. What's the plan? Okay, so, well, what's the proposed solution, I should say, not the plan. We're going to do the plan next. But the proposed solution Doug is going to put together, and it's fairly straightforward. We're going to take the old shaft and we should swap it out for the new one, update any downstream information like the 2D drawings. So using the built-in interface that you can see there, we can provide descriptions, we can set timeframes for these operations, and illustrate and communicate the issue. As you can see, again, Windchill has automatically collected a lot of the information for us, and Doug could go away and add to this. In this example, setting any attachments, maybe there's a specification sheet or visual images, maybe some photos have been taken on the shop floor, which will help aid and communicate this change. That can all be attached to this process. What Doug's also just done there is attached a separate problem report. So with this change, he feels there's another problem that was raised within the business that can also be solved throughout this change process. So you can solve many problem reports with one change request. We now move on to Pat, and Pat is the product owner, and it's his job to review any change requests. So those formal applications for a change within the business. So very similar to when reviewing a problem report, Doug can review this change request, this formal process of wanting to make a change within the business. So again, in a very similar way, Pat has the ability to open up and review all of the information that was necessary to understand what is going on, who raised it, who approved it, and who's passed it on in the change request. So just to show off again a slight different variation of how you can review some data within the change process, Pat is using Creo View. So maybe Pat as a product owner, he doesn't drive Creo, he doesn't have access to Creo, but we can use Creo View. Sorry, you say he doesn't have access to Creo Parametric. He can leverage Creo View, which is a free viewer, for interrogating the model, marking up, and the view data is 100% accurate to the CAD data. So if Pat wanted to take measurements or communicate dimensions, you can use Creo View for that. So just to aid communication, maybe someone wants to put together some marked up 3D data. So that's just what's going on screen here. Again, just another tool within Windchill that you can use to help communicate these processes. So we can save that off as an annotation set, and that annotation is associated to that assembly. So we're going to leverage that slightly later on, or I should say Pat is going to leverage that later on. So Pat is approving this change request, and he's dictating what process this is going to take. So this is going to be a fast track approval rather than a full track change process, just for speed and efficiency. And upon approving that change request that Doug put forwards, then we're going to generate a change notice. So this is the plan. The change request identified the need, understood it. We're now going to put together a formal plan of how the business is going to solve this problem. So again, Pat is going to set a deadline using the built-in dates, and we're going to create the first change task. And in fact, in this process, we only have the one task, but this could be multiple tasks. So these are the individual elements that are required within the business by specific people to solve this problem. So we're assigning a user to this task. In this case, it's a chap called Dennis, and we'll follow along with Dennis in a bit. But Dennis is a CAD author. He's our design engineer. So Dennis needs to go in, open up the CAD model, swap out the motor shaft, and update the drawings. So again, we're just providing information that is required for Doug to go away and do his job. We're going to collect the affected objects. Okay, so leveraging the words slipped out my mind, the change request. We're going to copy the information from the change request, the CAD data, WT part, and the drawing. But this data is released, so we need to make some changes to that. But before that, what you can see on screen, Pat's just taking his marked up annotation that we saw and attaching that to the object for Dennis to review and understand. But as I said, these objects are released, and for Dennis to work on them, he doesn't have access rights to work on released data. So Pat is going to go in and revise that information to enable Dennis to work on the new version. Meanwhile, manufacturing can still work on the release data without being affected by this process. So we've got our old data. Pat has now revised that, and we can now move this on to the next stage. What we can also do here is something we covered in, I think it was our previous episode, is determine the effectivity. So we talked about effectivity last time and how it can be roped into the change process. This is where we can do it. So setting an effective date for this new version of this assembly and when it's going to be effective within the business. So that was our first task. At this point, we could then create another task if there's something that had to follow on from that step. In our instance, though, for this demonstration, we simply have the one task to solve this change. So next we move on to the implementation. Okay, we need to execute on the plan that Pat has just put together. So we now are going to adopt the role of Dennis, who is our CAD author. And Dennis tends to work within Creo, and he's accessing Windchill through the built-in web browser. So again, on the home screen for Dennis, he's been assigned with the task, where again, it's presented with all the relevant information. What you can see there is Dennis opening up the old version. And let me just pause the video there, because I think it's worth just mentioning. I rewind slightly. Whenever a part is undergoing change within Windchill, all users are notified. So if you're not on the latest version, you'll always have this go to latest option. But anything that's undergoing change has this big red triangle to it. So that notifies anyone that's looking at this object. They can understand that this product, this part, is undergoing a change at this given moment in time. Switching to the latest then version, we can see that there's a resulting change happening. The change process is still ongoing and it's not finished yet. So as Dennis is CAD author, we're now going to add this to the workspace, and Dennis can fire this up to make the relevant changes. So here we have the current as is incorrect, which we can now modify. So looking at the shaft there, we obviously have this incorrect version. So the first thing Dennis is going to do is go away and find the correct version. We could use something like parts classification if that had been set up within the system for classifying different motor shafts. We talked about that earlier on. In this case, Dennis is just doing a simple search as he knows the part number to find the product or the part that we need to replace this object with. Within Creo, then we can do a simple replace functionality to swap over these two objects. Dennis just checking that he has in fact chosen the right object there with the splined end. And then using some evaluation tools, this part was a save as, so a lot of the references are still the same. We can use Creo to help to predetermine some of the references for us. those warning labels there are for the keyway. We actually don't need the keyway anymore, so we can, Dennis can choose to ignore that, and we'll just delete the keyway itself. So having updated the assembly, we can now, Dennis can take a look at the drawing, update any bomb balloons, bill of materials, and that sort of stuff. And then finally Dennis is just required then to upload this information back into Windchill and check it in before we finish off this change task. So there we go, uploaded and checked in. Bit of housekeeping, removing the information from his workspace afterwards, which is always good practice. And finally, then we need to inform Pat that Dennis has now carried out this task. So just heading back to the home screen, we can now complete the task that was assigned to us or assigned to Dennis. So any comments that you want to add can do here. And then we've got some electronic sign off here for Dennis, just to prove that it was himself who carried out this process. Now jumping back to Pat, we can see that a change task has been completed by Dennis, and this gives Pat a chance to review any changes that have been made and either accept them or reject them or cancel the entire process itself. So maybe if Dennis had put the wrong shaft in, Pat could here say, no, you've done the wrong thing, you need to go in and rework that and redo that. Everything was good in this case though, so Pat can approve that task. Now, obviously, if there were more tasks in the plan we put together, it would move down the list. In our case, though, we only had the one task in our execution plan. So we are now reaching the audit stage for Pat. Pat has the chance now to review the entire change process, everything that's gone on, what changes, we can check for compliance issues, anything like that, before formally accepting all the work that has been carried out within this process. So again, Pat is happy and everything has been carried out. If I just move on to the next screen then, final thing then, I just wanted to review the bill of materials. So if we go and have a look at our product, our 1 horsepower motor, we can review the structure and we can take a look at, again, that effectivity. So you remember when we were setting up the implementation plan, Pat set an effective date for this change to happen. So reviewing our part structure, we can see by default, we get the latest and greatest of everything. If we rewind back to some of those previous effective filters that we set earlier, we can see we have the old keyway shaft. And if we change the date to further in the future beyond the effective date, again, we are now up to date with the latest version of that product. So that's how you can sort of work those effectivity dates into a change process, which we talked about previously. So it's a bit of an overview of the change process within Windchill. Obviously, there are many different types of change that can be carried out. This is a very typical example of something that you may want to be doing. So Windchill then ensures visibility by providing real-time views of requested changes to all stakeholders within the business, okay, helping to keep everyone aligned. Yeah, it promotes cross-discipline collaboration, allowing teams to work together more effectively. You know, we saw Mike in manufacturing identifying an issue and raising that via my PDS search. We saw Dennis carrying out the bulk of the work in the CAD system, and Pat, who sort of orchestrated a lot of the stuff at the top level. Okay, we sort of guarantee traceability by accurately tracking all of that information throughout the product and its life cycle. Okay, so all of those change elements are recorded and logged within Windchill and are there forever. So at any point in time, if we want to go back and review, or when you are being audited and want to understand what happened in that change, that information is going to be there ready for us. Okay. And then lastly, then it strengthens governance by linking product information, ensuring that all changes are identified and stakeholders always have access to the latest and most up-to-date product details. Okay. So hopefully you can start to see how useful Windchill can be when it comes to the change process in not only allowing the business to understand problems within its business, but being able to identify and interrogate the impact of a change. By having all of these part structures, your WT parts, everything linked together, it makes it very easy to understand what is going to be impacted by making a modification. And Windchill can provide a lot of the information for you without having to run around and manually trying to understand all of these different associated objects. It then helps you in carrying out and executing those the implementation plan, automatically informing users when and where they are needed and what tasks they need to be carried out, as well as then, of course, having all of that traceability. So hopefully you found that useful. As I said, this was our penultimate episode. The last one is going to be on the 11th of April, where we're going to talk about collaboration within PLM. So working together with multiple different departments, different teams, and those sorts of things. So yeah, thank you all. I will have a quick look and see if we have any questions. I will do my best to answer them. Oh, apparently I sounded very distant. Hopefully that sorted itself out. I did not see that one as I was running through. Apologies for that. What downstream controls can Windchill apply to Dynamics 365? That's a very good question. Not something I'm comfortable answering myself. I'd like to probably relay that to one of our Windchill consultants to get a firm answer on that. So yeah, I'll take that one offline. But yeah, I don't think we've got any others. Oh yeah, apparently it was fixed, the sound. Okay, great. That's fine. I will, as always, I will stay online for a few minutes longer to answer any questions that do come through. But no, thank you all very much for joining, and I hope to see you again next time. Is Windchill change management included with Windchill out of the box? Yes, it is included out of the box and comes with its standard workflows, but any changes to that obviously can be made, yeah, of course. Windchill seems to be isolated to only PDM, but what about ERP data? So yeah, with Windchill, again, I might refer this for a more detailed answer to one of our consultants. But yeah, we can communicate with ERP data. So any of the information changed within Windchill can be communicated downstream. If you're talking about changes and where the single source of truth should be, let me speak to one of the consultants on that. If you have any more information on that, on your communication with PDM and ERP, please fill out that in the questions, and I'll do my best to get that answered as best as I can. That seems to be it though for questions. Does Windchill allow for any CAD data to be changed? So yeah, with CAD data itself, you can change out CAD objects. Obviously, though, you will have to go in and update those CAD, the CAD data itself. So at some point, Windchill, well, it depends how it's been set up, but yeah, Creo will need to be opened at some point to update the CAD models. If you're talking more about product variants, we do have capabilities within Windchill to automatically build new variants and affect CAD data in that way. But if you're making a change to CAD data, Creo Parametric will be required. Okay, I will take any other questions that trickle through offline. But no, again, thank you very much for joining, and hopefully we will see you all next time.